The Fate of the Poet. Magzhan Zhumabaev. Kazakh writer and poet Magzhan Zhumabaev left a bright heritage in the Kazakh literature. He had remarkable talents that are unique in our poetic legacy. It is difficult to find someone among his contemporaries who would have suffered more for the convictions and creativity. Zhumabaev's poems have been banned for many years. A free thinker, spent most of his life in jail. He experienced so much suffering that would have been enough for 100 fates. The name of Magzhan Zhumabaev is as valuable as the name of Konstantin Bauman in the beginning of the 20th century. He's a man of extraordinary talent, and surprisingly, it was only at the end of the 20th century, in 1989, when we learned that we had such a classic, a poet. His contemporaries compared Zhumabaev with Russian writer Pushkin. The poet grew up in a big family. Magzhan had 6 brothers and 2 sisters. His father Bakan was a bey, governor of the village, which meant that the family lived well and had the opportunity to give a good education to all the children. Already in his 4 years, he began to study Oriental languages and literature with a home teacher. He studied at the Petropavlovsk Madrasa, Muslim educational institution, and later went to Kyzyloda. In 1910, he became a student of the highest Muslim institution in the city of Ufa. He studied better than his siblings did. His grandfather Zhumabai always helped him with the studies. He always said that this child would someday glorify the Zhumabaev's family honor. Magzhan was interested in poetry since childhood. The rhymes came to his head easily and smoothly. He was ready to compose days on end. The young man read his poems to the family and classmates in madrasa. Unfortunately, his early works were not preserved, but it is known that the first collection of his poems was published in 1912. The young poet then turned 19 years old. He never described the truth of life directly because he was romantic from the tips of his hair to heels. He was closer to romanticism than to realism. He wrote, dreaming of something spiritual. In Magzhan's poetry, one does not need to look for epithets or comparisons. He has metaphorical poems, that is, everywhere there is a subtext. The work of Magzhan consists of 3 stages. The first is the truth of life of the Kazakhs. The second is political and public opinion, and the third is his artistic decision. This distinguishes him from other poets. At the Omsk Teacher Training College, he met with those who would change his life forever. The Kazakh intelligentsia could not fail to notice the young, gifted poet with a hot heart and bold judgments. Magzhan was nominated as a candidate for the Constituent Assembly and a member of the Commission for compiling textbooks for Kazakh schools. He coped with this task. The poet was entrusted to write such a boring book on pedagogy. How beautiful is the language of this book. Moreover, Magzhan Zhumabaev says at the beginning, I'm assigned this task and let Allah do it with dignity. He addressed the readers, teachers, students, feel free to write me what is missing. Let us fill in the gaps of my work together. The book begins with words, a teacher is the soul of the school. The fate of the people depends on the teacher. Can you imagine, in the current textbooks, you won't find such words. He says that one must always remember the authority of the teacher and his responsibility. Further, according to the requirements of pedagogy, all sections are presented. This book is quite modern. When they say that the Kazakh language is not the language of science, open the book of Magzhan Zhumabaev and see how accurately all professional terms were translated. For the first time, he was sent to prison in 1918. He spent about a year there. The reason of the arrest is clear. His political views, the struggle for the freedom and independence of the Kazakh people. Being in Omsk's prison and dreaming of a release, he could not possibly imagine what a terrible fate he would face. Magzhan turned 25 and he still had 15 years to live, 12 years of which he would spend in a prison. Perhaps from the whole galaxy of outstanding personalities of our country, his fate was the most difficult. He did not live at all. He did not have the time to enjoy the care of the wife and the happiness of paternity. After all, the heart of Magzhan was simply created for love. Zuleyka Zhaltirova was the first and the last love of the poet. However, their destinies never crisscrossed again. A young woman was like Magzhan from Petropavlovsk. They met in this northern city. Young and free people immediately liked each other, but Zhumabaev had to go to Omsk to study. Thus, Magzhan and Zuleyka lost each other for many years. Zuleyka tried to build her own family happiness, and Magzhan started working hard. The Soviet government declared amnesty to former political opponents, and with their help built a new republic on the territory of Kazakhstan. The country started building plants and factories. The education became available for everyone without exception. Magzhan strived to contribute to the reform of the steppe way of life. He wanted to change the old order and conservative principles. He was actively engaged in journalism, published newspapers, wrote the Batyr Bayan poem, and the Sin of Chopin work. Zeynep appeared in the life of Magzhan and, like a ray, consecrated his days with her presence. Beautiful and educated woman was the niece of Shokan Valikhanov. Young people were like-minded. Soon they got married. This marriage was very happy, but short. Zeynep died during childbirth. Inconsolable Magzhan was left alone with a newborn baby in his arms. However, the child, deprived of maternal care and milk, quickly weakened and, at 9 months, died of pneumonia. For Zhumabaev, these deaths were a terrible shock. The 1920s was the time of the so-called First Famine in Kazakhstan. Food ration was part of a set of events known as the War Communism policy. Methods of seizing livestock and bread were perceived by the local population as robbery and caused an increase in discontent, often turning into military coup. According to the archival documents, Zhumabaev was an extraordinary commissioner to help the starving. This commission was collecting donations, deductions to help people, as well as homeless children. Its activities extended to the entire Akmola province, and Zhumabaev did everything he could to make the life of distressed people easier. However, he was still alone and he needed love like air. He sought it everywhere, and when he found it, he lost it, suffered, and again continued his search. His next passion, a woman named Gulsum Kamalova, did not bring him happiness either. Unfortunately, Gulsum was a married woman. Her husband, Simbirsk's factory worker Gabdullah Akchurin, learned about his wife's relations with a famous poet and did everything to stop this connection. The study at the Moscow Literary and Art Institute opened for Magzhan a door to the world of Russian and foreign literature. He translated works of Lermontov, Gorky, Blok, and Gothi into Kazakh. He was called Kazakh Pushkin. His works were as valuable as works of Byron. They say he even resembled Yesenin, either with wavy curly hair or with meaningful poems. By the way, Sergei Yesenin and Zhumabaev were close friends. The Kazakh poet also closely communicated with other Russian poets of those years, like Mikhail Svetlov, Osip Mandelstam, and others. In addition, Magzhan gave lectures at the Communist University of the Toilers of the East. From then, he often delivered a speech to a large audience. Our so-called creative intelligentsia lacks truth and sincerity. Truth and sincerity imply freedom and independence. We feed ourselves and are filled with lies, and the people are accustomed to it. Lie brings untruth and dishonor. The latest is the most dangerous. If the nation retains honor and conscience, then it will not be afraid of anything in this world. His family was arranging Magzhan's wedding in Petropavlovsk. His father Bekan decided to independently arrange the fate of his son and marry him. Magzhan's bride was the daughter of a famous merchant, Zhamilia Konisheva. He paid a respectable bride price and organized all rituals preceding the wedding. Magzhan was ready to marry, but the fate again brought him to his first love, Zuleika, and they fled to Chelyabinsk.
Magzhan, az da bir şey dişi.
The marriage of Zuleika and Magzhan was condemned by relatives and friends on both sides. Nevertheless, love and heart seemed not to notice all the gossips and rumors. They were finally together and happy. Zuleika was highly educated and knew all Magzhan's poems. He has found more than just a partner. She became a good angel for him. Magzhan was accused of being a pan-Turkist and a Japanese spy and was sent to prison for 10 years. Zuleika did everything to release him. He was arrested as a member of the anti-Soviet nationalist organization located in Kazakhstan for its anti-revolutionary activities. Do you consider yourself guilty? I do not consider myself guilty. He wrote to his beloved wife from prison, "Dear Zuleika, I am sorry for the times I hurt you. I don't know if I can thank you for everything you did for me. I am really sorry to tell you this, but your husband is sentenced to 10 years in prison. And, most importantly, I do not consider myself guilty. Of course, you know that I am not guilty. Zuleika, please, come to me. But first you should get permission for a visit from the Lubyanka in Moscow. Then you should go to Maxim Gorky and tell him that I was arrested without explanations. Tell him that I am not guilty. I've never been against new authorities. On the contrary." Of course, Zuleika went to Moscow when her beloved asked her to come. Then she was sent to Karelia, and this brave and strong woman did as wives of the Decembrists. She went after her husband. The places of his detention were constantly changing. She was tired and exhausted, but continued to follow him. She was looking for him, and she has always found him. When once again she got to the camp with legs beaten in the blood, Magzhan told her, "Dear Zuleika, I want to put you on my shoulders and carry you to Mecca. You have become a saint for me." Maxim Gorky helped Magzhan. When Zuleika came to Maxim Gorky and his wife Yekaterina Peshkova weeping, they started to seek ways for his early release from prison. As a result, they were able to shorten his term to 3 years. Due to their petition, Zhumabaev was released ahead of the schedule in 1936. Magzhan Zhumabaev was unhappy because he has been deprived of writing. His poems have been banned, and the best and most talented poet was in exile. Nobody cared about him. All his dreams of a new, happy life were turned into dust. At first he was fired from the technical school, where he was working as a teacher. Then he was fired from school, an inappropriate person. He decided to go to Almaty and started to work at the local history museum. But he didn't work there long. He was fired again. He was desperate to find a job in Almaty and decided to move with his wife to the remote area near Almaty, where he was appointed the head of the medical center. But rumors about his unreliability came there too. The attitude of his contemporaries who had no problems with current authorities also played a tragic role in his life. According to Zhuleika, Zhumabaev's arrest was preceded by repeated visits to the NKVD. He had a premonition that something terrible could happen during these sleepless nights. Magzhan hoped that he would be able to avoid imprisonment. He was released recently and paid all his dues, but the system took under control the destinies of people. There was no place for pity. When he was leaving his wife forever, he said, "I'm not saying goodbye. Even God does not punish twice for the same sin. You know that I did not commit any crime against the people." The new circle of hell was waiting for him in prison. Ridiculous accusations and monstrous torture. He was broken and depressed. He wasn't just waiting for death, he wanted to die, but death still did not come. With no strength to endure bullying and torment, after all humiliations and tortures, he wrote Zhumabaev was declared the enemy of the people, and after his death, the Soviet censorship destroyed all the poet's works to erase his name from people's memory. His works were banned for 50 years. Even several generations of Kazakh people didn't know his name. By the way, Zhuleika was the only one to survive after the events taking place in 1937. She was never married and survived during the blockade of Leningrad. When she returned to Kazakhstan, she lived alone. All of Magzhan's relatives were repressed or persecuted. Unfortunately, we do not know where Magzhan Zhumabaev was buried. There is no place where you can bring flowers and touch the soil which keeps the ashes of an outstanding poet. We cannot find him, but we should do something. We must know and remember for what he lived and what he did. We should remember his works. Unfortunately, to date, a few books were published. It means that we still didn't appreciate his talent, his life, and his death.